but we're going to begin today with the latest on UK terror laws, Charles.
We are indeed, because the designation of Palestine Action as a terrorist organisation and its prescription as such has been covered on several UK column news programmes recently, and the repercussions and implications continue to deserve close scrutiny. Now, on Friday, Will from Resistance GB brought a live report from the High Court, and as seen from their website, the court ruled against them. This is set against a backdrop of a statement from Downing Street to mark the 20th anniversary of 7/7, shown under the counter-terrorism section on the government website. Keir Starmer said, "Those who tried to divide us failed. We stood together then and we stand together now against hate and for the values that define us of freedom, democracy and the rule of law." End quote. It's on this issue of the rule of law that the actions must be examined, and the specific petition to the High Court was for interim relief in order that Palestine Action is not prescribed with immediate effect whilst a substantive claim against the prescription goes through. Mr. Justice Chamberlain concluded, quote, that the harm which would ensue if interim relief is refused, but the claim later succeeds, is insufficient to outweigh the strong public interest in maintaining the order in force. End quote. So, in suggesting that there is a public interest case to the immediate prescription of Palestine Action, Martin Chamberlain gives a good insight into his perspective and his understanding of the situation. The judgment quotes some of the claimant's evidence in which it's stated that the main target of PA has been stopping Elbit Systems. And in square brackets after the word Elbit Systems, it says it is a defence company which is said to supply the Israeli government. Now, that absolutely suggests that it might not do so, but one glance at the Elbit website will lead you to the recent announcement that Israel has recently bought $130 million worth of communications equipment. And if you read on, you'll find that Elbit refers to itself as powering the future of UK defence. Of course, for defence, read war. And this is where the government should, of course, run into trouble. Now, as referenced by Patrick on Friday, the United Nations weighed in on the 1st of July, stating that while there is no binding definition of terrorism in international law, best practice international standards limit terrorism to criminal acts intended to cause death, serious personal injury, or hostage-taking in order to intimidate a population or compel a government or an international organisation to do or abstain from doing any act, end quote. The UN said that they'd been in touch with the British government on this issue, and I've requested a copy of the response from the Home Secretary. None has come so far. Of the very many inconsistencies, some of which were brought out in the George Monbiot video clip from Monday's programme, a significant one is whether issue-driven criminal damage is always viewed in the same light. And in 2023, 7 members of Extinction Rebellion were given suspended sentences in order to pay just £500 each after causing £100,000 worth of damage to Barclays Bank. And as the BBC reported at the time, quote, they argued during the trial that Barclays staff would have consented to the damage if they were fully informed about the climate crisis. Now, when it comes to international humanitarian law, the outcomes seem rather different. In October 2023, a reminder that Israel's then Defense Minister, Yoav Gallant, said, I have ordered a complete siege on the Gaza Strip. There will be no electricity, no food, no fuel. Everything is closed. We are fighting human animals and we act accordingly, end quote. Now, this is not isolated, with examples here cited by the Times of Israel and Human Rights Watch. And indeed, it's been a persistent theme. The Geneva Conventions, of course, are very clear about this. Rule 53 prohibits specifically the use of starvation as a method of warfare, making any such action a war crime. Now, the reason that this is important and that it bears direct relation to the direction given by the Home Secretary and the judgment formed by Martin Chamberlain is that the International Criminal Court Act of 2001 implicates the British state and those who are supposed to run it, because Section 51 of the Act makes it clear that, quote, it is an offence against the law of England and Wales for a person to commit genocide a crime against humanity or a war crime. And it's Section 52, which goes on to say that conduct ancillary to genocide committed outside jurisdiction, and this section goes on to say that it's an offence against the law of England and Wales for a person to engage in conduct ancillary to an act to which this section applies. So, in other words, any suggestion that the British government is facilitating any unlawful activities by the State of Israel would constitute a criminal offence. And since the 7th of October 2023, whilst the government has maintained that it's provided no lethal aid to Israel, with regard to Palestine Action, it could absolutely be argued that by permitting Elbit systems to operate within the UK, the government is therefore conducting activities ancillary to genocide, crimes against humanity and war crimes. So much for the rule of law, one might say. Now, on a much related note, the lockdown dividend continues to pay out, this time in part one of the independent review of the criminal courts, which has been pulled together by Lord Leveson. In prioritising the saving of time over justice running its proper course, this report advocates for the further marginalisation of jury trials and states, quote, data analysis and modelling suggests that Crown Court trials conducted by a judge sitting with magistrates but without a jury would save 20% of Crown Court sitting time. Now, this document was only published today, and there will be much more to bring out. But to close out this report, I would urge you to watch or to listen to a pair of highly informative and empowering videos which are on the UK Column website. Firstly, the principles of tax rebellion, as articulated by Chris Coverdale, and secondly, Ben Rubin's recent discussion on the natural order and the foundations of the Constitution with Will Keat. Therein lies an abundance of absolutely critical knowledge in both. Now, I think we've probably got a bit of time for some comment from Vanessa on this issue. I mean, Vanessa, any thoughts on the incredible raft of inconsistencies and where this looks like it's going with regard to Palestine Action?
Yeah, I mean, I'll discuss this in both of my reports today, but the fact that the British government is clearly complicit both in genocide in Palestine, the action that's being taken against the resistance in Lebanon, and of course the fracturing and devastation in Syria, and are then pointing the fingers at a small grassroots group that is trying to prevent genocide. It's insane. And of course, that is what the West has done also with Yemen. Yemen is effectively preventing or attempting to prevent the genocide in Gaza, and it is literally being bombed for its efforts. So no great surprises.
Well,